Hey, so this is Ron Evans in Real Estate 101, and today I wanted to hop on here because I was going through some news articles and came across something that we definitely are dealing with in my area, and so it sounds like it's also being dealt with nationwide, and I just kind of wanted to touch on this topic a little bit here and hopefully get some feedback and some questions on your thoughts to this. But it's basically about private home sales or pocket listings. In the market that we are in and have been in now for a couple of years, it's so competitive and people missing out on so many bids that it's become really prevalent for agents or buyers on their own to just try to find someone who's willing to sell their house privately before it gets to the MLS and has competition. And there are a couple schools of thought on this. Number one, it's great for the buyer because they can avoid the competition and have a better chance of their offer getting accepted because they can negotiate in a one-on-one type of a situation, even if they have an agent. They're not having to worry about being counter offered based on other buyers potentially being available for the home. Number two, some say it's really good for the seller. They don't have to come to full market and go through all the hassle of doing a lot of things we talked about in my previous video, where worrying about staging and doing fixes and everything and prepping their home to come to full market and having tens, if not hundreds of strangers coming in and out of their home daily. And that could be a huge issue right now with the pandemic and people's health and safety. And the third thing to think about is from the agent standpoint. If you've got a good buyer and you're an agent that has the ability to research and do the legwork and find these pocket listings and private sellers, well, heck, it's an easier deal for you too. Now, you don't have the overhead that you're having to go through to bring a home to full market representing the seller. You can negotiate your split direct. Maybe you even tell the seller it's a benefit to them because they're going to pay less commission, potentially. There's a lot of pluses to it. Now, on the flip side of that, there are opponents that want to bring up that how do you know that the seller is getting their highest and best offer and it's in their best interest to sell privately if they don't come to full market for the very reason of not having the extra buyer competition? And I can see that as a valid point for sure. Sometimes you don't know. And there are others that think that for the buyer, buying privately is good, but what happens if they enter a contract with this potential seller and the next day a better home for them pops up on the open market? Could they be tied into a transaction? Possibly, depending on your local guidelines and laws. And then even from the agent standpoint, if the agent's looking out for his own best interest or their business best interest, selling a house privately, not gonna lie, if there's no sign in the yard, it makes it harder for you to market yourself to the neighborhood. So you got some pluses and you got some minuses. I personally think that it's a benefit, and I see the benefit far outweighing the negative in this regard. Now, another thing that I'm reading here in this article is that these pocket listings, from the legality standpoint, kind of lie somewhere in a gray area. There are people that are arguing that it could violate antitrust laws, potentially be discriminatory. Violating the Fair Housing Act. And this could just, come from sellers who know that if they go to open market and they have to market their home to everybody, they may have less of a say as to who buys their home than if they sell privately. And that's where the fair housing and discrimination kind of creeps in there. It also talks about pricing and being careful that you're not setting like a minimum price. It talks about how this article talks about the National Fair Housing Alliance sued Redfin back in October 2020 for setting minimum price requirements on the homes it lists. And they are stating that it discriminates against minority communities. Another issue that comes up, and I know that there are some states and even other countries close by that have laws on the books banning dual agency, which is representing both buyer and seller. And so obviously, if you're a real estate agent, you have a buyer or a seller client, and you enter into a private sale or a pocket listing sale, you're going to be representing both sides. And there are a lot of proponents to this or opponents to this that don't think that you can equally represent both parties in a transaction like that. And I can see that there's a lot of unscrupulous people out there just wanting to make a buck and take advantage of somebody for whatever reason. I've personally been involved in a few double-ended deals, with a side note of never looking for that in a transaction, but it has happened organically. And truth be told, I'm always very upfront with all parties in that regard, with what I can and can't do for the secondary side of the transaction. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on, I've kind of thrown a few things out there, started out just talking about these pocket listings, but what are your thoughts on these pocket listings as an agent, or if you're a buyer or a seller listening to this? What do you think? Do you think it's a good thing because you can just basically pick your buyer and not have to go through the whole situation of bringing a home to market and kind of roll the dice that you are getting exactly your home's value? Or are you against it, or at least questioning it based on some of the negative things that I've brought up, the dual agency, knowing that if there's an agent involved, they're representing both sides, and are you sure you trust them? Or are you sure you're getting the highest and best price because you aren't allowing your home to go up full market competition? Or are you a buyer who's just thinking, man, I never even thought about this. Maybe I should talk to somebody. Well, I'll throw my hat in the ring. If you're in my area and you're a buyer and you're struggling to get an offer accepted or to even find a home that is suitable for you, hit me up. Send me an email at realestate101@ronevansrealty.com. Let me know your situation. I'll consult with you. I have a good track record and a good proven plan in place to find off-market listings. I can probably get a deal done for you. That's it. That's all I had for today. What do you think? Have a good one.